So we have a long history of some of these things going on. Why do you think we can't succeed in checking these things and they continue to happen? Because no public officer should be keeping $1 million and 300 euros in their bedroom.
Certainly, or exactly so. And if you are chronicling, you perhaps also read about others. I remember the Huzia example and the bridge he went to commission, if you remember that. So this is not new at all. What you have said seeks to establish the fact that in our democracy, we have done things the wrong way, or the politicians have allowed the wrong things to happen, and the citizens have sat aloof to allow these to happen. It is also a result of a weak critical mass of the citizenry, and as well because of the powers that derive from the Constitution for the various appointees that we put in there. Let me say that this happens because of the weak political will to fight corruption. It also, again, happens because we do not have a very good political financing regime. And so if you have been part of this process, you would remember that in the past year or thereabout, civil society has come together through an initiative to begin to look at the cost of elections. The cost of elections, which then breeds some of these actions, ensuring that some political actors who are behind the scenes are pulling the strings.
Yeah, the CDD, the CDD's investigation, an important intervention. The CDD's investigation shows that presidential campaigns cost $100 million in Ghana, $100 million to have a successful presidential campaign. $100 million. You need 4 million Ghana cedis to be able to do a successful parliamentary campaign.
Exactly. So that is what I was coming to. So if we have monetized the process so much, and we have allowed this to go on harm, nobody gets punished for some of these actions. And now something, the reality is that the ordinary citizen has also come to appreciate the fact that they are not getting the fair share of the national cake. And so they are using this opportunity to also then bargain. So in some instances, you would realize that some communities are bargaining that if you do not get us this, we will not vote. Others are bargaining that if you do not give me a car, I will not vote. So the person who is interested in political office is now getting voted based on the amount of money they are able to make. And to crown it, the EC law on political party financing is not that clear, and the sanctioning around it is also very weak. But then we are talking about even actions to ensure that political parties are in compliance. This is weak. So this is why the drive for a political financing regime that takes away the issues around people giving people monies that cannot be accounted for, and so people would have to go and stash them in their houses. I'm not saying that is the case for the Honorable Minister, but just like you read copiously from the Honorable Obeda Samoa, this we have heard continues to happen because we have a regime that is weak, we have a regime that is not as robust as we should see it, and we do not see a lot of sanctions happening within the space. So going forward, we have looked at how do we get this change, that people who are contributing to the party's financing begin to do so, like it happens in other places. We were all here in this country sometime back when Obama, the former president of America, decided to contest for elections. And therein, his campaigning and the financing regime that they put out, there, people were contributing $2 and the rest. And there is a cap on how much anybody can contribute. If this is not done, we continue to make, we would continue to talk. Civil society speaks about it. We would even get the political party financing regime maybe changed. But then if the will to stop this is not done, and if we are not sanctioning people, such as what is happening now, then we would continue to have the situation not change. And so for me, I believe that as we have evolved as a country, one of the things that has come up for us that is good is the OSP Act, which seeks to cure the injustices which were perpetuated because the attorney generals or the general's attorney generals would say they cannot prosecute their own. And within this, if you look at the OSP Act, regulation or the LI 2374 and the regulation 20, which talks about declaration of income and properties, which is very intrusive, I must say. It looks at politically exposed persons. It looks at all their interested parties, husbands, girlfriends, boyfriends, households, whoever has an interest in the person who is politically exposed is supposed to also be looked at when it comes to issues around such as what we are talking about today.
And a significant part of that, a significant part of that is that in that new law, as in the OSP, you know the difficulty that SHRAJ was the body to investigate corruption, abuse of office, and the rest of them. And the Supreme Court in the Richard Anane case said that to have, investigate abuse of office, you need an individual complainant. SHRAJ cannot say, I'm listening to radio, I have heard some publication, I want to follow it up. So the important thing for the OSP is that we have cured that problem by saying the OSP can on its own just get up by hearing of this information, move in and begin to check on the person's wealth and whether the money they have can be attributable as in the Constitution requires, whether it is attributable to their income, it is attributable to a gift they had, or it's a loan, or it's inheritance. Otherwise, it is wrongful, money wrongfully acquired, and the state must collect it.
Exactly. That is exactly where I was driving to. And for that, they do not need a complainant.
That's right.
And they could even use newspaper publication. So in this case, we have a copious newspaper publication, and I just checked the OSP site. You would see a lot of citizens making complaints, and that is the baseline for them. So the OSP can go into this. And if you look at the form that was developed per the regulation for people to then provide evidence, you would see that it will cure a lot of the mischief that continues to happen as a people. And we all know that the OSP has started doing some good work around prosecuting some people if it is important. We know in the past 3 months, he called a person who people thought he wouldn't have. So the OSP's independence to do this is very clear. Okay. However, Samson, we must also state that the role of the citizen in this regard is important, that whatever they see, if there is more information that is not available to the OSP or to the general public, which others have, they should make this available to support the process. Right. Again, we believe that as we go forward, the OSP should be allowed. So there shouldn't be any unseen voices from behind threatening them not to pursue what they are doing, because we know this happens. We know it continues to happen. The president should allow this process to go on. If he doesn't have the courage to do the right thing, we are very confident that the OSP would take this up.
What do you mean? What do you mean by if he doesn't have the courage to do the right thing? What right thing are you?
Do the right thing by asking the lady to step aside and let the independent investigation proceed. If he doesn't have that courage, perhaps because
when Manasseh investigated the contracts for sale, ABAJ, the Public Procurement Authority, you drew the president's attention, and without any delay, he made him step aside. And after SHRAJ was done with its work, he sacked him. And then you proceeded with a second petition to have all the board members, including himself, also investigated. So the president has a record that you will not say is that bad, isn't it?
In one instance, in many more of the instances which you can also speak to, there have been instances where the president has cleared people who were being investigated because another institution has investigated them without any evidence. There have been instances where we have asked, and in the case of the health minister, when the Sputnik V issues came, the COVID audits and others, there have been so many instances where the president has, excuse me to say, sat aloof or not listened or heeded the call of civil society and the citizenry when it comes to some of these things. But then this is so glaring, this is so blatant. Anybody having $1 million in their house, that $1 million getting missing and they not even realizing it. Something for me, if 1,000 cedis gets missing from my house, perhaps I will know. I don't even have it there, let alone to say that it is going to happen. But then to end something, I would like to say that in most of these instances, when it comes to investigations, you mentioned SHRAD, you mentioned YOCO, you mentioned FIC. The issue of interagency collaboration is usually very weak. In this instance, we have clarity. SHRAD went to court and we know what happened in the instance you mentioned. Let us see some very clear collaboration happening. And even the GRA comes to play in this instance. So the FIC, YOCO, SHRAD, and the OSP should help each other to ensure that this is done expeditiously and done very well. And we believe that in their strengths, or in the collective of their strength, they would be able to do a lot more for this country.
Thank you very much. I know my last, and I will need a very brief from you. We're looking at the holistic picture, and I just spoke about the Justice Yawa Pau's report on inordinate judgment debts, which we all know. We know the facts, but sometimes we play the ostrich. The politicians cook these judgment debts, and they go and take huge amounts of monies in millions and of dollars and euros just to oil their campaign machines. They fleece the country. And the Judgment Debt Commissioner is a bit hesitant, but gives you certain indications and says that we must look at a political party funding bill to check some of this. I will have I'll have Sam George and Dr. Tio Echampon look at that. But my question to you is that you have been on the backs of government for the need to pass the Conduct of Public Officers Bill. I remember many, many years ago, it's over a decade now, they can't seem to pass it because the asset declaration one we have now, we all know it's not effective. Occupy Ghana has been writing to the presidency and insisting that the new law should be passed and made effective, more particularly for purposes of verification of the assets declared. I remember when you organized a meeting about 6 years ago, your contention was that even in the Rawlings regime, you declare the assets and it is verified. There's publicity. It is gazetted, so all members of the public can see. But in our now democracy, better than the Rawlings PNDC regime, you don't do the verification process, and there's no publication. Now, the IMF has made this an important condition for what we are getting, and the government says it is committed to passing it. How soon do you think this will be passed?
Something we all live to see, but this is one advocacy we would not let down, because this law, if in its current state, in fact, if it's passed, does not depart too much from what exists when it comes to the issues around assets declaration. And so it is a good thing that it was not passed in the last parliament, because it went through an extensive process. But then when it comes to issues of verification and also publication, this is not done. And when you look at the best practice, OECD, and also the UNCAC, and when you look at even the Convention on Preventing Corruption and Combating Corruption, the AU, the benchmark. They want us to have robust legislation, and these include verification and publication, and also monitoring of such assets. Unfortunately, that is not what the Cocoa Bill is giving us. So now that someone else is keeping us in line, I believe then the discussion would again then come up so that we look at the issues around robustness. And robustness would only be when we have verification. If people just dump their assets and we do not verify them, that is not enough. And the Auditor General currently tells us that they look at the assets. So when assets are declared, they open them and look at them. What we need to see is the publication of the assets. And we say so because those who put themselves up for public office have no business wanting to have secret dealings and wanting to keep some things about themselves private.
All right.
We know they have their private lives, but in the instances where you can acquire wealth and we do not know where those are coming from, it is a matter of agency that such people, both their wealth and their liabilities, are declared and published for the good people of Ghana to know. And so it is heartwarming that the IMF has done this, because we know for sure that the government indicated through cabinet that they were not going to pay attention to this bill. So we are happy that at least our advocacy, which didn't make sense to government, has made sense to the IMF,
right,
which is now calling them to attention.
There must be
so
verification and publication, or otherwise we don't have
without which,
right.
Without which we believe the bill is in its current state, even though it
all right. Thank you very much, Mary. Let me come to you.